before you turn off the lights every day before you go to sleep, and you're like, you know what, I did everything I could in my power today to get me closer to what I really want, then you had a great day.
On the 26th episode of Passion in Progress, Jerry Hernandez of Flaco Creative. Jerry is a hustling creative entrepreneur all about brand identity development, taking brands further than just a logo and color schemes. We talk about his holistic approach to brands and all the subtle nuances that it entails, including people, objects, and culture, among other things. At one point, he even gives an example of a water bottle company that he's working with right now and how they are going through their process to find a unique selling position. If you didn't even know what a unique selling position was, like myself, then you'll find out in this podcast. You guys will really resonate with Jerry's message and the amount of hustle and effort that he puts in to achieve success on his own terms, getting paid to do what he's passionate about, being a creative through design, marketing, and branding. Jerry is also an amazing photographer. The eye that he has for taking scenic shots has that Instagram aesthetic that businesses are looking for. And if you don't believe me, just take a ponder minute at his Instagram page at Flaco_Creative, and you will see what I mean within a heartbeat. To that end, we also discuss doing business as an influencer on Instagram and his thirst for adventure. Specifically, his pictures where he's swimming with dolphins or deep sea diving, because that stuff is crazy. But before we get to the show, I just want to take a quick second to thank all of my supporters who have been listening to the podcast thus far. Thank you so much. If you've been sharing it on Twitter or tagging me in a screenshot of the podcast on your Instagram DMs, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to tag me in anything social, I'm at Javier Mercedes X. That's Javier Mercedes X. And for those of you that really want to support me and my message and what I have been doing with this show, Passion in Progress, I now have a Patreon for my listeners to support me. What is Patreon? Patreon is a membership platform that makes it easy for creators to get paid by the community that supports them. Currently, I'm looking for ways to provide the most value to my patrons. So if anybody out there has any suggestions and you're a fan of the show and considering becoming a patron, please send me a DM and I would actually want to create products that people would find valuable as patrons. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. That link to support me is www.patreon.com/Javier Mercedes, Javier Mercedes, just like my name, because it is my name. So without further ado, let's take this out to the 26th episode of Passion in Progress with Jerry Hernandez of Flaco Creative. What is up, Mercedes? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show, where we talk to people and what they're passionate about, and hopefully through hearing their stories, you are inspired and motivated to go out and pursue your own passions. Today on the show, we have Jerry Hernandez. How's it going, man?
It's going well, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm super stoked to just be a part. I've been watching you grow, and that's awesome.
Thank you. It's dare I say, it's a passion of mine that I'm pursuing.
As you should.
Get to me with your story, man. Why am I here? Like, what are you passionate about? Let me know.
Honestly, brand identity development is probably my strong suit, and more so about focusing on it in a holistic manner. Brand identity development isn't just a logo. It's not just the colors. It's the way you say things. It's the way you carry the brand. You know, your brand is supposed to be out working for you when you're not there, and how is it going to speak for you? As a visual communicator, that's my job, right? Is to really shorten the bridge between what can be conceived and what is true from the sender to the viewer. It's just doing it cohesively and designing with intent. If it doesn't add value, don't add it, and stay true to what your core values are as a brand, because that's how you're going to grow successfully. And everything just comes from there, right? The core values of your brand are the soul of your brand. And from there, you build on how you speak, how you look, who you surround yourself as far as other brands. It's like you're shaping a person visually, which is pretty cool. And I love that.
Yeah, how about that? It sounds like I'm in the right place. If you can't tell that he is passionate about this, you should just leave this podcast now. Please don't leave this podcast. Let's dive into that. So you said as a person, but when I think of brands, I think of whole companies. So are the people that you're working with specifically people, or are they whole brands?
People are brands essentially these days.
Yeah.
You know, it's the truest statement that Andy Warhol ever said. He said, in the future, we'll all be brands. Wild we are, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm my own brand, you're your own brand, and you know how we decide to dress, how we decide to speak, So it's taking all that and really putting it into a package of like design for a company. So right now, like for example, I'm working with a water company, and they're going through some growths and some changes as trying to identify who they're going to reach, what their core audience looks like. And, you know, behind the brand is a pretty affluent couple who are great people. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell the story of their family in the brand. So I think they're hand in hand. It's not just, the brand just can't be without the people. I think they go hand in hand.
Let's dive into the water, for example. Is it the one that we have right over here?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the people that are listening, this looks like a bottle of vodka, but it's water, is it not?
It is. So this was actually their beta brand, right? Northern Source. It's from Canada. And what this water is, it's pretty exclusive kind of premium spring water that comes from a spring that hasn't been tampered with by anybody as far as farming, any kind of chemicals. It's been left alone. So the way this water comes is, let's say you were to put a cup into that water and drink it. It's the exact same way. Nothing is put in and nothing is taken out of this water. So with their beta, they were kind of looking to reach a few different shops that could kind of sell the water for them as kind of like an affiliate program. Unfortunately, that first round didn't work. And so now what we're doing is we're restructuring them and figuring out what their best audience is and how we could reach them. I took a lot of things into account, but all in all, we're really going to go after what is an affluent family, much like them. The reason for that is this water here, this Northern Source, isn't really for kind of walking around with, taking it to yourself. It's more of a sharing water, right? So the people you want to get are the people that are going to actually have events, whether it's with their family, whether it's catering events or, you know, weddings or whatever. You want large groups of people because they sell this by the case. It's not by the bottle either. So you get a case of 12, you want to share, right? So that's kind of how we're trying to pitch things and reposition them and hopefully find growth. We just went through their like audience segmentation section, and we were figuring out like, okay, well, what does audience look like? What do they drive? Where do they shop? Where do they buy? What do they like to do on their free time? And that was actually a really interesting process as far as trying to figure out who these people are that we're going to market to, right? It's a fun game in a sense because there's so many options. There's so many different people all over this world. It's like, how are you going to come up into this one niche and really excel and win over that market, right? When you're selling water, you can't just sell water because then you're selling a commodity. We have to sell more than what this water actually is. So what we're looking to sell is the experience and the fact that if you order this water, you get it within 24 hours of your order and it's free shipping. Right now, we're keeping it to Austin area only. So that's going to help us really dictate if there's a market for that kind of demand, and also not spend too much time going after customers that aren't really going to be long-term customers.
It sounds like you are a mix between Amazon and Mac, presenting something in a way that's the experience, and then just Amazon in terms of you get this immediately.
Well, that's the thing with, you know, as we start to develop as people, it's we are instant gratification people, right? We want things now. Think of like when your phone is taking just 2 seconds longer to load and you're like, this phone sucks. I hate this phone. Mm-hmm. When back in the day, you had to wait for like, 2-3 minutes at a time. And we're like, we can't wait anymore for anything. We need it right now. We need information right now. We need data right now. We need everything right now. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to cater to that and also tell the brand story in the same way. So I was kind of thinking over what would be like a successful USP, right? Like a unique selling position for them.
Wait, unique selling. Oh man, I'm learning so much. I love it.
Right. I think it's a 2,000 percent markup from drinking tap water to actually buying bottled water. So why does anybody really buy bottled water? What does that look like? And based on the demographic analysis that we did, right, we're going after these moms, these dads, these families. They're already 30 to kind of like 45 well-established people who don't really have the time to go to the grocery store all the time and really invest in a bottle of water like this, right? Like they just need it at their house in the morning because they have people coming over that night for dinner. Mm-hmm. Or they have to go to their son's birthday party and they said they'd bring water or something. It doesn't matter. They just don't have the time to go get it. And they have the income to order it.
It sounds like a specific kind of niche too. One, yes, the branding, but the marketing of the product, just letting people know that the product exists, that this kind of service exists. Because it sounds like it's not even the bottle itself. It's more the service of getting that experience.
Yeah, that's the challenge when you're trying to sell something that can be perceived as a commodity, right? Because if you go off a commodity basis alone, there's going to be somebody that's going to undersell you. So if we were just saying, we sell water, we have water, come buy our water. Somebody's going to be like, we sell water, we have water, but guess what? Our water's $3 cheaper. Somebody's going to be like, you know what? These guys are apples to apples. I'm going to get the one that's $3 cheaper. So what we're trying to avoid is an apples to apples comparison and more of an apples to orange comparison, right? So what can really be disruptor in that market, and that's the 24-hour delivery and the free shipping to select areas here in Austin.
Oh, I didn't know it was free shipping. That's nice.
Yeah. So they're not going to go anywhere too far. It's going to be all here just in Austin. And then eventually, if we can find proof of concept that works here, we'll expand to the Austin and then the Dallas area, and then we'll see where they go from there.
So that I just wanted to give the audience an idea of just your expertise in the matter, which leads me to beg the question, like, how did you get to this point? What did you, what's your background, and how did you get to the knowledge that you're at right now?
While I was going to school, I studied graphic design, and then I was just constantly learning different things. I worked in sales for a long time, and simultaneously I ended up at a job with an e-commerce company called Gear Authority. And what they sold was motorcycle apparel and like helmets, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. You know, I was doing their ad campaigns and their newsletter and running their ads on their site. It was exciting because when we'd get returns, like people are actually buying things off the newsletter, I was like, holy, like that seemed to work. But then it was a bummer when you'd send out a newsletter and it's like one person opened it and you're like, well, what did I do wrong? And so that became like a little game in my head that I found exciting. And then simultaneously ended up picking up a job with a design firm in San Antonio. So I was working both those at the same time. And at the design firm, I was learning a lot of traditional design about what branding means, right? At that point, my thesis of what branding was people, objects, and culture, right? You need the people, you need the objects, and you need the culture around that to build a strong brand identity. Now, since then, it's evolved to a whole lot more things that are needed to have a successful brand identity, I feel like. But at that point, it was that, and the ladies I was working with, it was called Creative Park out in San Antonio. They were awesome. They were much like me, you know, they were doing their own thing. They were working from home still. They were a design firm, but they're still working from home. So it was two of them. They had their whole downstairs living room set up like an office. So I'd go work from there. And it was kind of cool to see that you didn't really need to be like in this big design firm to have quality clients and have good direction and have people understand your views as far as what good branding is. So I learned a lot from them doing that. And after that, I moved here to Austin and I got the job where I met you. Mm-hmm. And through there, I started off initially in just e-commerce, just making ads, just pumping out ads and t-shirt designs. And it was just like one right after the other, right after the other. If there's one thing that was really good about that, it was like going back to college again, right? You have all sorts of creative minds around you in that workspace. If you can find these resources that you work with and be like, you know what, I don't know how to do that. Let me ask a question and figure out how do you do this. That is the strongest thing, right? You connect with the people around you and learn. And you just take all that in, and it's that continuous want to learn, to grow, and just be good at anything you can do, right? Like, might as well do it. Just years and years of stuff just started adding up. And what's next, right? Like, I don't want to just continue to help somebody chase their dreams. Like, what are my dreams? What do I want? What does that look like? And one of my biggest things was like, how can I live a life that will allow me to dictate my day as I see fit? It wasn't so much like, oh, I need to be making all this money or I need to be this. It's just, I just want to wake up and know that my day is going to go because that's how I planned it, right? I don't have to go somewhere because somebody needs me there. If I'm going somewhere, it's because I said, you know, hey, this is what we should do. We should come meet me here. Am I doing what I love every day? And I am. Like, people talk about retirement and one day I'm going to leave this job and retire. And it's like, I don't see that for myself. Like, if I can make art and branding and design and help people grow their businesses and any kind of marketing, whatever, it doesn't matter what it looks like. As long as I'm being creative, I'm happy, even, you know, how long it takes.
It's awesome, man. Powerful stuff.
It's a crazy journey because there's a lot of like things you still have to continue to want to learn, right? Like every day, like I'm trying to teach myself how to be better at like different kinds of coding, like Python and, you know, like jQuery, stuff like that. Like I have HTML and CSS in the bag. Cool. Okay. Well, what else can I go get? And it's like finding the time to even allow yourself to grow, right? Because if you're trying to run your own business, you're doing everything all the time for everyone that involved, you know? Where can I find a time to learn? And I found the most successful way to do that is I kind of started setting up like school, right? It's like, okay, from Fridays to 10 to 1, like that is my designated learning time. I don't get any meetings. I don't do anything else. It's Fridays on 10 to 1. I'm going to learn whatever I'm trying to learn. And it's a process that works. Like that's how you learn things in school, right? So you just apply that process and just follow it, you know, and you start growing and you're like, oh man, now I'm closer to what I wanted to learn. Because if you just say, oh, I'll do it when I have free time, you're never going to do it. You have to make the time and really set a schedule for what that looks like. It
sounds to me like you have a skill set of habits that you have formed, or at least set parameters on what you're doing. What on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis, what are some of the tasks that you might try to fulfill in order to accomplish entrepreneurship successfully?
It's really processes, honestly, it's a lot of processes, and depending on what I'm doing and what project I'm kind of working on. So for example, let's take last week into account, right? I had a handful of deadlines for four clients, right? 4 clients last week, a handful of deadlines. And it was like, one client needed 3 things, one client needed 2 things. What I do is on Sunday nights is I really structure. I have 3 large whiteboards in my office, and I really structure like, okay, this is what everybody's going to need kind of like moving through the pipeline. And I look at them, right? And I'm like, okay, what can I accomplish? Not right away, but what are the easier tasks to get done? I've gotten into the habit of using my whiteboard to Asana, and now I'm just tracking everything on Asana task management system. And even though I'm really just tagging myself on what these projects are, it's helped me so much as far as staying organized and setting set times. Like for example, I handle a few different social media accounts, right? I do that now from noon to 2. Every other day. And it's like, you have to do it then because you can't just find little gaps here and there. There's no consistency to it. So in order to stay engaged and kind of bring in new viewers and new users and communicate with them, and it's a process, but you just have to set structure.
Do you put your personal stuff in there? So do you work out as well?
Yes. I have 2 times that I try to get to the gym at, right? So I'll either work out between 11 to 12:30, or I will do from 3 to about 4:30. I am loose on how much I make it to the gym these days. Business has to take priority, in my opinion. I love working out, and I like feeling great and healthy and things, but there's days where it's like, what holds the most value? And trying to run your own business, you make promise to other people, and you promise them to get their work on time because they're depending on you. So I think the gym usually takes like a backseat to any of that.
And then are you relationship right now too?
No.
Okay. So that's the other thing. Personally, one thing that I wasn't expecting so much is taking the leap and the value of time, which I've talked about a bunch on the podcast, but the value of time in entrepreneurship and how every hour, second, minute, whatever it is whether you're allocating it correctly or not, and how that compounds over time to make the right decisions. And then you either learn from your failures of wasting time or doing something that was really efficient, like what you're saying, and getting to the point of setting up a habitual process that's like, this is my set times to do stuff. That's really powerful stuff. And I hope anybody that's listening, if they're thinking about entrepreneurship or if they're already in that whole space, I feel like they can relate to everything you just said.
The biggest thing is like self-accountability, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
That is what you have to learn how to like conquer, is just you have to be self-accountable for the things you need to do, because when you're trying to run a thing on your own, it's like nobody's telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to be here. It's like you're telling yourself, and it's really easy to be like, I'll do it later, or I'll get to it in 10 minutes, or, one more episode of this, one more episode of that. And that's a dangerous game to play, because you can easily, lose 4 or 5 hours that could have been really productive hours because you're awake and you're actually energized. But instead you're on your phone, you're watching Netflix, you're doing something that's not even really productive. So I make it a habit to leave the house. I don't work from home. I feel like a lot of people are like, don't you just love it working from home? And it's like, if I work from home, there's so many distractions here. I float around from a variety of coffee shops from right now. And that's good, because I've honestly made a lot of clients just from working in different coffee shops. They see what I'm doing, and they approach me and they're like, hey, what do? Do you do logos? Do you do this? And then I kind of get to talking to them, and they're like, oh, wow, I actually need this. I need that. And that's been super helpful. I can't tell you how many clients I've landed just by doing that. And it's a rotation, right? I work from probably 6 or 7 coffee shops that I really enjoy. And it's just nice to, not have to be at home, because then you don't feel so isolated from like the world. And even though you're out there doing your thing, you get to see at least the streets and the sky, and like you can hear the sounds, and it's bad. And it's a bad thing to isolate yourself, because one thing is like, no matter how much knowledge you have, if you're just keeping it to yourself, like what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You asked me earlier before we started the podcast, like the point of like kind of doing the podcast other than like having sweet conversations with people. But when I took the leap in leaving my job, I wanted some structure in place that forced me to leave the house and have meaningful conversations with people. And hey, look, we're in another place having a meaningful conversation.
Dude, and you've been all over the place, and that's awesome. That's like one of the most exciting things to see, right? It's like here is a guy who was like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance on what I want my life to become, right? Like, and that's a big question. Always ask yourself is like, is the thing I'm doing today getting me closer to the person I want to be tomorrow? Every day. And you were like, you looked at your life and you left what was something that was kind of comfortable and secure and familiar. And you were like, here I go. And dude, you've been back and forth from LA. You've been meeting all sorts of people, all wonderful things, all these conversations, and all these conversations are giving you so much more knowledge, right? And you're just growing internally. And what a beautiful thing.
Yeah, there's a guy that I follow that I already did a podcast with, Jeff Barch, of Story Greenlight. He helps people tell stories and in the video format, but he just released a video today. And at the end of it, he's really good at making metaphors, but skipping the metaphor, his quote of the day was play a bigger game. And that really struck a chord with me today in terms of like what you're just saying, having higher expectations for yourself. And when you're, I guess, if you are living a comfortable life, then more power to you. Like I love how Gary Vee puts it. It's like, if you are genuinely happy, then you've won. Like that's like, if that's what you set to accomplish, then don't take any advice from me. Looking at where I was at before, I was like, all right, what purpose or what kind of impact can I have on the world with what I'm doing right now? And doing stuff for like Chive Charities was awesome and things of that nature. But moving forward, it's like what you were saying with your schedule, setting up your life in terms of like doing things on your own terms, which is pretty powerful stuff. You talked about learning, educating yourself, right? Can you tell me if you have a mentor right now, like kind of guiding you through what you're doing?
I don't. And I've noticed that a lot of successful people do.
Yeah.
Because it helps because they kind of already know the ropes, right? They help guide you like, oh, I've learned from this, I've learned from that. And right now I don't. Right now it's just, me, and I'm trying to learn as much as possible. I use a lot of audiobooks to learn everything, right? Like it's funny, we were having a conversation the other day about like LLC and what that looks like. And I just powered through. It was probably like a 2-hour book on LLC, but it's like all the rules and like they break down each state on like how much it costs and how much it does this and what is beneficial and how to grow and things like that. And not a lot of it stuck the first time around, so I'll have to listen to it again. But it's like doing things like that, right? It's like, I don't know this, but I need to know this, and how can I learn this, and what's the easiest way for me to learn? Like, I don't like to read. Reading bores me. I need to have information being thrown in my face and just like
or in your earlobes.
Yeah, I can't. Reading's fun if you have the time, but most of the times I'm listening to these Audible books, and I'm working. I have to work. Like, I got to get this stuff done, so I'm working, listening to this Audible, and then I'm like writing my notes as I hear something that's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Write that down. And even though I don't have a mentor right now, I think there's a lot of resources if you go and look for them that will help you grow in whichever direction you're looking to grow. Because that's a beautiful time we live in where everybody can share any kind of information, and hopefully you're finding good information, right? Because sometimes you can find bad information. So, take whatever you hear from all these resources with a grain of salt for the most part. But if you look hard enough, you'll find the right stuff.
In the conference that I just went to in LA, Vid Summit, I was just surrounded by so many people that were in the same field. And just like you were saying, not being cooped up in your office, working all the time, being surrounded by all those people, it like opens up the world into the possibilities of like, man, this guy's hustling really hard. These guys are doing that. And these people are doing all these other things. It allows you, surrounding yourself with other people in the field, I feel like helps further advance and pushes your limits of what you think is possible.
I agree.
That's it.
No, I agree. I think being around like-minded individuals gives you an extra push. So about maybe 2 months ago, I was working from a coffee shop, Summer Moon on South First, and I was just working. I had things to do. I was working, and right next to me, this guy was just sitting there, and I saw him kind of like keep looking over, but he didn't really say anything. He just kept glancing. So as I was starting to pack up, he kind of is like, hey, he's like, what do you work on? What do you do? And I kind of got into the process of what I do and what it looks like. And he's like, well, one, I can need some help on, my branding stuff. If you have the time, I'd love to kind of sit and talk with you. He's like, but two, he's like, I meet with a group of individuals. It's every other Tuesday of the week, of the month, every other Tuesday.
Yeah.
Every other Tuesday, these guys meet together. And what it is a group called LikeMinded, right? And it's all about building a community around like-minded individuals who are entrepreneurs. And he's like, we meet, every 2 weeks, and it's a very easy social event. You just talk to people, you kind of network, right? But the biggest thing for these guys as a part to like a networking group, these guys aren't trying to sell you anything at the end of it, right? Like they're just literally opening up their doors to a bunch of entrepreneurs from all ranges. I've met guys who are doing really, really well. And I've met guys who are still in school and they're just like, I don't know, I just need to be in this environment to grow. And I think that has been really awesome because I've literally just in these past 2 months, I've met so many different people who are doing different things and really making moves in their own space that they've kind of carved out for themselves, right? And that's awesome because you're like, well, what are you doing today? I'm working. What are you doing? Working. You know? And that's nice as opposed to like, I don't know, it's just a different feel when you're with people who understand that you have to work a lot more than just the regular 9 to 5 to get what you want.
When you did make the leap from your job, tell me how that first like month or two looked for you.
The leap was a leap and a push. You know, it wasn't like I was like, okay, on this day, here I go. I had already been kind of like setting myself up, but I had kind of scaled. I was like, okay, in 3 months, this is when I'm going to do it. And I didn't get the 3 months. It was just like, hey, it's today. And I was scared. Honestly, it was scary because I was like, I know I don't want to go work for anybody else. I don't want to do that. That's the last thing I want to do. I was like, I was so close, like the 3 month mark, you know, I was like, I'm going to do it. Here I go. And so that first month, it was kind of scary. I really had to, you know, look at my finances and figure out, you know, can I actually go on my own based on the clients that I had and what that work was looking at. I was like, okay, let's try. You know, if I don't try now, then what am I going to do? I'm going to go find another job. I'm going to work really, really hard for this other company and, you know, lose another 4 years. Doesn't make sense. I did it, right? Every day I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? Okay, well, you need new leads because you need more clients because the clients you do have now, although they're great, they're not going to be able to supplement the income that, you know, you're replacing. Looking for leads was probably one of the hardest things as far as like, this is why you need me. This is why you should work with me. But what I realized is the more work you do, the more work more work will come to you. It's a weird thing. Like I just kept designing stuff for like little things. I had to shoot something for the Omni downtown. And it was just, you know, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you take these photos of these ballrooms? We need them for a package that I'm trying to present. And I was like, yeah, sure. You're my friend. I'll do it. That person worked at the Omni. Come full circle, you know, maybe like 3 months down the road, they're like, hey, this company's coming down and they just need some headshots of their people. Can you do their headshots? I was like, absolutely. Of course I'll do it. Still, you know, nothing crazy, nothing big. Then I do the headshots for these people and then they call me, you know, send me an email. They're like, hey, we're going to do our annual event. Would you like to do it? You know, and I'm like, absolutely. I'd love to cover your annual event. Okay, awesome. We'll fly you here. This is what it's going to be like. Boom, boom, boom. And now that client is somebody who I shoot all their annual events. And I've been doing that now this is going to be my 3rd year. Right. So it starts with little projects that build up into big projects, but you just have to do it in the direction you're looking to go because you're going to grow. If you're an ambitious hustler, you know, with a strong work ethic and you really, really work, right? It's going to take work no matter what you want, but you're going to grow, whether it's for another company, you're going to grow and move up through their positions, or if you set it for yourself and you work really hard, you're going to grow for yourself. So just pick and choose what feels right for you. So even though it seemed like a forced push and it was scary, that was the best thing that's happened to me this year so far, because now I am in a position where I run my day-to-day life without anybody telling me what to do. And I get to be creative and I'm still doing the things I love and the things that matter to me the most. And somebody's like, you know what? All that makes sense to me. Please come do that for my company. And I'm like, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity, because not only is it a place for me to showcase my work and my beliefs as far as what design is, somebody actually sees that vision and is entrusting me to do that for them. And that's cool. That's the coolest thing. You just network people, right? And you get to meet all sorts of crazy people from all sorts of different places that your work is bringing you to. And that's awesome. Like I talk about when I sold my car to buy my camera, right? Like you don't need a car here in Austin, really. You know, I don't mind taking the bus. I'll call an Uber if I need to take the Uber. And that camera has taken me around the world. Wow, what a thing. Who would have thought that was the trade I was making that day? But that's what felt right to me. I needed a camera because I wanted to compete and I wanted to really, you know, grow in that direction. So I didn't have the money. What was the easiest thing I can get rid of that would give me that amount of money to get a Mark III? My car, laters. And that camera's taking me around the world. So it's just believing in what you want to do and really going and getting it and setting yourself up, right? Something I say all the time is proper planning prevents poor performance. Really just look at all the things you have to do to accomplish your big goal. Don't just look at the big scary goal as one. I know everybody says that, but it's the truth. Really break it down into digestible pieces with hard dates that you want to accomplish them by, and really hold yourself accountable. That's those are all big, scary things to do. But once you get into the rhythm of, I have to do this, I don't know, the doors just kind of start to open up one at a time and just keep pushing it.
How did you make your first goal? Like your first overall goal? Because I feel like from my standpoint, that's just trying to lock down something as a really big goal that I know I want to achieve, and then deconstruct from there. How did you when you first started, or even right now, how did you make that goal?
Honestly, my first thing was it's weird, this kind of journey I'm on is not just about like business, it's more about myself as well. And the first thing I ask myself is like, who's the man I want to become?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, what does that even look like? It's crazy. Things are always going to be changing. You're always going to be growing. There's always going to be some kind of uncomfortable things in your life, some really great things in your life. But to keep like some sort of a compass, at least for my sanity, I was like, what's a real thing that I can do? And it's like, okay, who's the man that I want to become? That's what I asked myself first. And I sat down, I wrote that down. It's like, okay, well, I want to be creative. I want to be able to travel. I want to have my own workspace. I want to have a gallery. Like, right, all these I wants at first. I want. And it's like, okay, well, you see all your I wants. And then I was like, okay, well, how can I do at least one of these things every day and start growing in that direction, right? So how do I want to be creative? Well, what are my skill sets? Okay, well, I do photography and I do brand identity and I do graphics, graphic design well. Those are 3 skill sets that I do well. It's like, okay, well, how can those 3 skill sets help me grow in these other things that I want to get? And it's like, okay, well, what do I feel comfortable offering? Okay, so I have strong knowledge in brand identity development. So what does that look like? It's not just the logo, it's the logo, it's the voice, it's the tone, it's the brand. It's just so much more than just the logo. And I feel like sometimes companies get lost and they're like, I just need a logo and I'm going to take over the world. And it's like, no, you need to figure out how you're going to speak to your audience and what you're going to say to them and why you're using this color. And I know it sounds very like, it sounds just kind of like, why do you need all this information? But the truth is you do. And that's the only way you can really excel, is by really breaking down what your audience is and how you're going to grow in that direction. And so that's what I had to do for myself. It's like, who are the ideal clients that I want to work with and that I can actually help? And, by helping them, what kind of return do I get that's helping me be the man that I want to be? And then applying, the monetary things that I gain to getting me closer to the bigger picture, right? Like, one thing is, right now I'm renting this house. It's cool. I like my house, but I don't want to be renting this house anymore because this isn't getting me where I want to be. What I'd like to do is have a studio space. So if I can find a building that's zoned for residents and, for whatever business, I'm going to move into that because now I can make money on my house. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're basically, it would be a place where you're living upstairs and then downstairs. Like
I'm working.
Yep. Exactly.
But that's already getting me closer to like the main goal that I want to get to. So it's just kind of figuring out which kind of digestible things you can do to get you closer. And just write lists, honestly, write everything down that you feel like you need to do, whether it pans out or not, as long as you can visually see it and you're like, well, does this still hold merit today? Because I wanted to do this. And it's like, you can look, you can reflect. And if it doesn't, then you let it go. And if it does, then you're like, okay, then I still need to do this and get it done. If that makes sense.
Yep. I like how you tied it all together, in that you really like doing branding for other people. And then you turned around and flipped it on yourself to find your own goal in terms of, what do I need to, what's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of that? And all that. And speaking of purpose, I think personally, that's what's so hard for me right now. 'Cause starting out, a lot of what I wanted to do was, let's start a podcast. Let's do the YouTube thing. Let's make tutorials and all this other stuff. And it was more hit the ground running, just start doing it and then see what happens, as opposed to just sitting on your laurels and not even achieving anything. So now that I'm in the act of doing things, now it's the pursuit of finding purpose in what I'm doing. And that's the elusive overall goal. And what you're doing in your passions and all that, is this where you thought you would end up, like right now?
Right now, dude, I'm barely where I'm at. Where I'm at right now, I wanted to be like 2 years ago, right? But it just takes time.
Is it practical how you're thinking about it, or?
Well, the way I see it is like, this is something I wanted to be doing 2 years ago, right? But there was no way 2 years ago I could have been doing it. So
yeah.
It's like, I'm a lot closer now than I was then, is kind of like the message, right? So right now, I think I'm in a good direction. I'm not at my like end goal,
Mm-hmm.
but I am oh my God, so much closer to the things that I envisioned only in my head at one point. And now they're like within reach. Like I can go grab them. It's like they're right there. And what's crazy about it is it's like you have to be the one that believes in your dream the most. Does that make sense? Like it's this crazy idea that only lives in your head, that only you can really see 100%. And that's what wakes you up every morning and keeps you from going and getting a regular job. And, you know, it's like, no, this is what I believe in. And you don't know if it's going to be the right choice or the wrong choice, right? You're just kind of on this journey, hoping you're doing the right things that are going to get you closer to the person you want to become.
Yeah, speaking of the person that you want to become, can you tell me about the holistic experience that you were talking about with brands? Because I remember when you were telling me about Amazon, it was pretty interesting how they like just the boxes themselves and all of that stuff.
Amazon, everything from A to Z, right? That's who they are. So the subtle nuances in their logo we'll start off with is like it's the Amazon logo. You see the logo and it has a little smiley face underneath that, right? And the smiley face goes from the A to the Z. So even that,
I don't even remember that. That's awesome.
Right?
Mine's already blown.
So instantly they're in the most like common interaction a person will have with their company, the logo. They're already telling their key message, everything from A to Z. And so what else? What other hidden things does the logo have, right? The logo has motion in it because it's the little arrow coming down there, and then the smiley face underneath it. All right, it ties it all nicely. So Amazon, if you look at it, what kind of feeling do you get when you get your things in 2 days? You're happy. You're like, there it is. Absolutely, I needed that. And what a greater feeling, because we were talking about it earlier. It's like, you know, we're a generation of we need it now, we need it now, we need it now, and they feed right into that, and it's a beautiful thing. If you look at their box, for example, what's on their box? A smile. You know, Amazon's delivering smiles at the same time because that is what they do. They've really looked at the whole experience and they catered the logo, the branding, the packaging, and even just a personification of a smile on a brand that only exists online, right? You can't go to an Amazon store and be like, hi, I'm Javi. I just bought this thing and I'd like to return it. You have to do it all online. So to give such a humanistic character to a brand that only lives online is well done. It's well done.
Does that play into a brand that you worked with, or even if it isn't a brand that where you just know you hit a home run?
There's a logo that I did for a company called The Beacon, and The Beacon is all about mental wellness, right? So originally they came to me with this problem. They're like, hey, we need a logo. We're trying to stir awareness about mental wellness. And I was like, okay, well, what does that even mean? So during the research phase, I went in and, you know, I started searching a bunch of things, and I ended up finding probably 15 TED Talks on mental wellness and what that looks like and what the problem is and how society views it. So the problem with mental wellness is a lot of people see it as like, you should just be able to fix it. They don't think there's anything wrong with you, right? There's a very negative stigma. It's like, oh, you're just being crazy. You need to fix that. And the truth is, it's like there's real problems that people are, whether it's chemically unbalanced or something that's going on up top, it's not working the right way as it should be. And because of this negative stigma, people are having a hard time communicating with others like, hey, this is what's going on inside of me. And they don't want to be judged. They don't want to be felt like any kind of negativity, right? Because they're already dealing with this problem and they're trying to open up to somebody, and then somebody's going to give them shit about their problems they're dealing with. Like, what a terrible thing. So the goal of the Beacon company was to, you know, inspire people to communicate with others and talk about your problems and really like talk about what's going on inside your head and erase that negative stigma. So the branding that I did for them was the logo. And I took all this information in and I was like, okay, well, how can I visually communicate that you should be open and not afraid to converse with somebody about your problem that's going on? You have the name, and the icon is really the strongest part. So a beacon is a flame or a fire, right? That's what beacon stands for. So what I have is a flame in the shape of a bee, right? It's a smooth organic flame in motion in the shape of the bee. But inside the bee, I actually, you know, carved out a little space where you can see, think of like a comment bubble, like a conversation bubble. It actually lives within the negative space. And my thought process on that, when somebody sees this, I need them to know that the fire within them is there for them to open up and speak out and reach, right? Like they need to know that just come up and talk with it, like light that fire, like ignite that spark to get you to talk to other people. Like, don't worry about it. You know, the success of the logo has been measured by people actually being attached to it, right? Gravitating to it. Like that brand is starting to do some things out in New York, and that's exciting. People are actually buying into it, and you know, they can see that logo as a beacon of light, if I may, you know what I'm saying, without being too kind of like punny or whatever. But I was able to take what the client's words needed and what the problem was and really package it into something visually that would communicate to others, and they would be like, oh, I get it, maybe right off the bat. So we'll see.
In terms of branding, I know we were having a conversation about it, but I didn't even think about the amount of professionalness that it brings once you develop a holistic brand. And I think one of the biggest things, especially with trying to do doing a YouTube channel, is having your mantra down and having all of those ideas and have everything that you make from day to day go towards the purpose of what you're doing or what you're trying to accomplish. And from what you were just talking about, even in designing a logo and how you were saying it's so much more than that, it helps set the building blocks for future success in the direction that you're looking for.
So the logo is really just a personification of the brand's core values. The core values are going to be tied to everything you need to do. It's going to be the imagery. It's going to be the fonts that you use. It's going to be the colors. It's going to be the way you say things. It's going to be how you build your social channels, how your social channels interact with, your community that you start to develop as you start to grow. And it's really setting strong core values that is going to carry the most wind all the way through when you talk to people, when you do things, and that helps set the structure really. And that's all it is. That logo was only a personification of their core values and how they wanted to reach people.
Yeah, and what you were talking about with the fonts and everything, not only from a core value standpoint, but from an efficiency standpoint. Once you have parameters of what to use, it's a whole different ballgame. It's in terms of making content. It's so much easier when you know what font you're going to use, what colors, how those colors match together, where to put a logo, and all that stuff.
Once you figure out, your audience, and you figure out your core beliefs and your pillars, and, you set a fine positioning statement, then you start to grow, and then you start to apply all these rules that you kind of set. And yeah, you break the rules here and there, but for the most part, like you said, it helps with efficiency because you have structure. You have a process. The process is, oh my God, you need to develop processes for everything if you want to be successful. Like everything has to have a process that works, right? And that's a good thing. You set up a process, and if it doesn't work, you evaluate it. You're like, okay, how can I change something that kind of missed the beat? And then you do it again, and you're like, oh man, this works a lot faster. And you're like, this is a process. And another thing that I've started to realize is like, as much as I love designing and doing what I want to do, at some point, it's not just going to be me, right? So how can I create processes that are successful, and then how can I teach them to whomever is going to be in the same space working with me, and have them replicate these processes and know that if I go away for a week or two, that the business is going to be fine. So it's setting strong processes for everything.
Do you see that happening in the near future?
The part of me wants to say yes, and part of me wants to say no. I'll tell you this: if in March, I hit the projections that I've set for myself, then for sure I'll bring somebody else in, because it's just going to be too overwhelming for me to try to do everything. I'm a little, tight on time now, but I can still manage and do everything that I need to do, and everything I'm promising my clients, I can still accomplish. It's once I see that I'm missing marks with things that I promise my clients that I need to bring somebody else in, I feel like. Because at the end of the day, I only get to exist and do what I do because of my clients. They entrust me that I'm going to give them the best work, and that's what I strive for. So as long as I'm not missing anything with my clients, then I'll continue to run it on my own. But the second I feel like, I'm out of time and all this needs to be done, then you bring somebody else in my opinion.
Driving enough revenue to support that.
Yeah.
I think that's another big step in the entrepreneur space.
It's a scary step, dude.
And at least you're setting yourself up for success by already having the processes or establishing the processes now, which I think is half the battle. And this is completely tangential, has nothing to do with this, but your Instagram feed is amazing.
Thank you.
If you, what's your Instagram handle?
Flaco_Creative.
So if you guys go check it out, he's like in the middle of the ocean swimming with like dolphins and like whales and whatnot. Like, is this while you're out doing stuff for clients out in the world, or were you just like, you know what, I think I'm gonna go take some photos of dolphins today?
That was an interesting venture that I did in the beginning of the year, right? My partner at the time, we were kind of capitalizing on two things. We were capitalizing on her social numbers, And the fact that I had a unique skill set for marketing and, design and photography.
That definitely suits Instagram.
It does. But what we would do is we weren't necessarily coming up with like, hey, let us stay at your hotel and you'll get some photos. It was, I created media kits and I put numbers behind it, right? I was like, okay, let's quantify every number you get, every number I get, and let's see if we can capitalize on that. And so I would send out these media kits with information with, these are the numbers we get, these are the views, these are the likes on average, how many things, actually get sold when we work with different companies, and package that up nicely, send it to a bikini company, a hotel, you name it, somebody we wanted to work with. And what we would do, we weren't even like charging money. We were just like, in exchange for an all-inclusive 4-night stay, we can give you this work. And companies were like, okay, awesome. And we were like, really? And they were like, yeah, this all seems very legit. Because we would promise things, right? Like we'd put you on this website. This website's generating this much views, right? We had already started building a kind of little community amongst ourselves, her and I. And when we would go to these places, it's like, okay, well, what do we like to do? It's like, well, we like to go hiking. We like to go diving. It's like, okay, well, who else can we work with and say we can put them on this blog feature? We can put them on this Instagram post. And so then it was like, we'll reach out to these adventure companies, and these adventure companies would take us out to the middle of the ocean. It's like, come swim with dolphins, or, so that was part of it. But then there'd be times where it's like, okay, well, we're here for work. We have a morning off. Let's go see if these dolphins are out here. And that's just the need for adventure, right? Like that, I don't know. There's something, that first time I ever swam with dolphins, man, it was the most beautiful thing, because they're not in captivity. They're just out in the ocean, like living their life, and they swim in these enormous pods, and you're just like, how is this even real? Because they come so close, because they're curious, man. They come so close to you, and then you're like, okay, everybody's going down. So you dive in with these dolphins, and you're like underwater, and you're trying to hold your breath, and you're trying to keep up with them. And then all of a sudden you're in their pod, and they're just all moving fast, and then you're moving really fast. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm really deep in the ocean right now, and I got to get back to the top because I can't breathe. So then you panic for a little, and then you get back to the top, and you're like, wow. And you kind of like get composed, and you're like, let's do it again.
That's awesome, man.
That's probably one of the coolest things I've got to do, is just, swim with the dolphins and the turtles and manta rays. Oh, man, that was quite a morning. We were out there for work in Bali, and we were looking for manta rays all morning. And there was like 2 big boats that were like shipping like divers off, because these mantas are usually pretty down low for the most part out in Bali. And the divers were like down there, and they were like chasing them. So the mantas were like hide. And meanwhile, it was, me and Miranda, we were just kind of just swimming around. Like we had our own little boat, and we're like, you see one? No. You see one? No. And I mean, eventually you get tired because you're just swimming in the ocean. But finally, like, it was, I don't know, I was like just kind of swimming, and then I looked to the left, and you just see these enormous, just like almost like wings, man, just flapping through, and they're just so graceful, and just and then it went, and then it was like gone. It's like, I'll see you later. And that was probably one of the coolest things ever, because they're just so big and just beautiful creatures. Like, I had been wanting to swim in manta rays for the longest time, and to finally just have one that close to you and just look at you, and then it's like, later's guy. That was awesome.
So were you swimming with your camera as well?
So I was using, at this point, a DxO1. And what a DxO1 is, it's a very small 20.2 megapixel camera that has an underwater housing. It is a really powerful camera, and it's about this big. And oh yeah, I'll take that all the time. And you get some good quality images and videos just off that little camera. It takes practice to use it, because the back isn't like a regular screen where you can see everything. Picture like when you're flipping through channels and you get like kind of a half of a channel, and it's all like black and white and just a bunch of fuzz and dots. That's what the back of their screen looks like. So you really have to get used to just shooting it intuitively, right? Like, I'm never really looking at that back of the screen. I just know where I have it held. That's going to get me the look that I'm trying to get. So that was just like constant like practice. Because at first, my photos were rough underwater, man. They were not.
Is it digital?
My photos were rough underwater, man. They were not good. They were like, you'd get one but you spent like 3 hours out there shooting and you're like, man, I got one fucking photo. And it's like a little blur turtle and you're like, oh. So it was just constant practice of using that tool, right? I mean, with any tool, the more you use it, the better you're going to get with it.
That's awesome to hear the behind the scenes of people's Instagram feeds, because I love seeing, there's so many people that I follow on Instagram where I'm like, what's the story behind that? Like, how did they get out there? What are they doing? And now you know. Please go check out Flaco_Creative, correct?
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's a hoot. And by a hoot, I mean it's really beautiful photos.
There's a lot of different things on there, right? And that's all part of like the journey of my own self. You know, it's like, well, what do I really want to showcase? What am I trying to capture? And as I grow as, you know, a photographer, it's like, how can I make somebody feel something by looking at a photo? That's my goal now. It's not just like, I want to shoot fashion or here's, you know, all these cool animals, which is tight. Like, I love that. That's a good, fun part. But now, like, you know, in my work, it's like, how can I make somebody feel something? And I don't know what that looks like. I'm barely figuring it out. So I hope I can figure it out, you know, here soon, but we'll see.
When I think of your Instagram page, I think of the one where you're underwater and you're so far underwater that you don't see the top of the water and you're just like looking up. And I think there's like a bubble going up, but it's like, dang, how does he get down there? I hope he lives after he takes that photo.
Dude, that's one of my favorite photos too. So I was practicing how to make these rings, right?
Yeah.
And it's so hard. I literally spent one morning in a pool, like just upside down, just like trying, because they look so beautiful in the ocean, because they really just like, they get enormous, like all the way until they get to the top surface. You have to go obviously underwater, and with the breath that you have to kind of just like blow more breath out. So you're already trying to save your breath, and then you're sending some out to get this little ring, and then you're trying to stay down there long enough so you can kind of swim through it. And it's like, it was quite a process. I want to get a good one. I have yet to get a good one, but I will. It's going to just take a little more time.
I feel like you're dedicated enough. You're going to.
I am. And it's such a silly thing, right? Like, just to like, I need to blow this little ring in the ocean because I want to swim through it.
Life goals, hashtag.
Dude, but once I can do it, I'm going to be so happy. It just takes time, right? And that's like anything that we do, you know, it's going to take time. But if you really want to do it, just put the time into it and it's going to happen. What a wild world we live in where that's the case.
I love how you put that in context, where you're talking about all these lofty things like setting goals for yourself with clients and all this stuff. And then you're like, man, I just want to fly through or swim through my own air bubble in the ocean with manatees or manta rays.
I do want to swim with manatees too. I want to swim all sorts of things, man. The beluga whales would be awesome. I can't wait to get like a chance to swim with them, and real whales, but just time. It's going to take some time to get there.
Let's start to cap this off. The question I ask everybody at the end of the podcast is, if you were to tell somebody that is either leaving college or I guess leaving their job just like how you were, what would you tell them to get to the point where you're at in terms of success?
Hold yourself accountable for the things that you want to accomplish. Nothing's going to be given to you. You have to go out and take it. Just because you feel like you're entitled to something, that doesn't mean it's going to get to you either. You have to go out and work and get the things you want. So always be accountable. With the people you work with, be honest and be transparent in your form of business. Don't screw anybody over. You know, you're going to have to work with these people sometimes, whether it's a short amount of time or a long-term time. You're going to have to work with them, and you should just be honest. Operate an honest business where people will trust you. Honestly, just believe in that big picture. Believe in that big picture that is obtainable. It doesn't matter how far-fetched it seems, right? Like I said earlier, you know, break down that big picture into digestible steps and things that you can accomplish one at a time, but always believe in that big picture because you can make it a real thing.
One, to add on to that, how would you, in my circumstance or just anybody's circumstance, like I was saying, one of the hardest things right now is to find the purpose and the goal that I'm trying to achieve, or what is that goal that I'm even trying to set up for myself. If you were to tell somebody to embark on that journey of finding a goal with purpose, what would you tell them?
I mean, it's all relevant to the person, right? It's like, it depends on there. You're like, well, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Then I can give them probably a more reasonable set of advice. Mm-hmm. But it's all really just for your goals, man. Just outline, you know, how am I going to get closer to it? How am I going to get closer to it? What little things can I do even if it's just changing, a routine that you have right now to something different. How can I get closer? Do everything in your power to get you closer to that goal. The rest is up to fate, right? Like if you can, before you turn off the lights every day before you go to sleep, and you're like, you know what, I did everything I could in my power today to get me closer to what I really want, then you had a great day.
That's tight. Powerfully tight advice on the Passion and Progress podcast. So you already said your Instagram handle. Where can people find you, or where do you want people to look for you?
To see, I guess, some of my branding stuff, you can go to flaco.info. You can kind of find the write-up that I did on kind of why I believe Amazon is a good example of good branding. I kind of dove into that. That's almost like my thesis as far as what I believe good branding is, right? Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting read. And then there's just some other work there. It ranges from, product shots to branding stuff to apparel design, all sorts of different things. But those are probably the two best platforms to kind of see what I'm doing.
And you can find me at Javier Mercedes X on all the different social platforms. Thank you so much, Jerry, for today. This has been such an insightful conversation.
Dude, thank you. I'm honored to just be, even asked. I mean, you're doing some great things, man. I'm telling you, like, you're out there meeting with a lot of people who are just like you and me, right? Who are just like, they believe in this dream so much in their head that they're like, I'm going to go get it. And I'm going to do everything it takes to make sure that it becomes a reality.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with successful people and upping the ante.
Yeah.
That helps you play a bigger game, dare I say.
It does.
Encapsulating it all. There we go. Thank you guys so much. Till next time, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. That helps spread the word. And if you really enjoyed it, you could tweet it out. You could take a screen capture of it and show it on your Instagram feed, your Instagram stories, and all of the things. Javier Mercedes X is my name on all the social handles, and thank you again.